What's up, y'all? Um, Firstly, I want to thank you for trusting me with clicking on such a long video. But this is a preface for a monologue that I heard from Neil Boards last year, and I've been wanting to share it with everyone that I know on here since I heard it. Um, I'm really interested in getting your thoughts, and I thought that it was interesting, and I want to make some of you aware that it could possibly be interpreted that what you're about to hear is somehow pro George W. Bush. And let me just tell you that if you know anything about Neil Boards, he's not exactly what you would call pro George W. Bush. What this monologue is about refuting the Obama administration claims of, where we didn't cause any of this, we didn't put this car in the ditch, we're doing all we can, and everything else. There's some very interesting, factual information out there. And what Neil Boards talks about in his monologue here that you are about to hear is how Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, being propped up by government acts, fair housing type acts and things like that, were able to grow so large that collapse was nearly imminent. Like they became so top heavy they couldn't be supported. And it was due to government mandates of decreased requirements of credit scores, forced openings of financial institutions, and other things like that. So the point in this monologue, if you'll listen, and if you can get over your any biases you may have against George Bush or what have you, it isn't about that. So if you can, listen with an open mind, and I'm really happy to finally be able to find this and be able to share it with you. And we'll see y'all later.
Today, millions of Americans are looking for work. Millions have lost their homes or will. Millions are pretty much lost out on their retirement savings, and the reason, of course, the economic crisis we're facing right now. And I don't care who you are, what you do, every once in a while, you probably sit back and say, what the hell caused all of this? How did we get, what happened? How did this happen? And the short answer, the quickest way I can explain this is our government, and this is Republicans and Democrats, got this idea that anybody that wanted to own a home should own a home. Regardless of your credit history, regardless of your earnings, regardless of your ability to pay back the home loan, there was a political push to get everybody in this country to own a home. And it led to the passage of various laws, not the least damaging of which was the Community Reinvestment Act. This is where a home lender, for instance, in Dunwoody in Atlanta, which would be a higher income area, if a bank or a savings and loan or somebody up there wanted to open a branch in Dunwoody, then the federal government would say, well, yeah, you can do that, but you got to open a branch in Cabbagetown, or you have to go south. You have to go to a low-income area, and you have to open a branch and start making loans there, too. So the bank, in order to make the loans that would be profitable in the wealthier areas of town, had to also make loans that they knew they would lose money on in the poorer neighborhoods of town. And it kept going, and it kept going. And backing up all of this, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Because, pretty soon a bank makes enough loans, they run out of money to loan. What do they have to do? They have to take the loans that they have already made and sell them to somebody else. Then they use that money to make even more loans. and bundle those loans together and sell them to somebody. Who's going to buy them all? Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Some of them, most of them. And then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would bundle these loans up, and they would put 150, 200 loans, 300 loans. They'd put it together, and that would form a financial instrument. Some call it a security. And they would sell that to an investor. And the investor then would get their money back as the people paid off those loans. But in order to encourage people who could not afford a home to make loans, they made these loans low interest. The interest rate would climb later. And they ignored creditworthiness. And they didn't make these people put any of their own money into the loan either. They would loan 100% of the value of the house. They'd loan 110% of the value of the house. I'm sorry, I'm getting academic here. The bottom line is that Fannie and Freddie were buying, bundling, and then selling millions of these loans that were essentially worthless. And as far back as 2001, the Bush administration saw that we were getting into trouble. And they tried to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And they were blocked by the Democrats. Now, yesterday, somebody sent me something. It's a newscast from September the 24th of 2008. The newscast is Special Report with Britt Hume. And the reporter for this story was Brett Baer. And the story was about the Bush administration efforts to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and who blocked these reform efforts. Who blocked them? In the report, you'll hear 2001, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. In all of these years, efforts to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were blocked, and you will hear the voice of the people who blocked them, or one particular person. And you'll hear the voice of Treasury Secretary John Snow warning about economic catastrophe. We'll hear the voice of Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan warning about what was to come. And then Barney Frank saying everything's okay. I want you to listen to this, folks. September 24th, 2008. You wonder how we got into this mess we're in? Listen to this.
Many financial analysts are saying that if mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had been effectively regulated years ago, the supercharged subprime mortgage meltdown that led to the current financial mess would either never have happened or would have been nowhere near as severe. Chief White House correspondent Brett Baer rejoins us now to examine the timeline. What were those warning signs? Who raised them and who disputed them?
The Bush administration raised red flags starting in April 2001. The 2002 budget request declares that the size of mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is, quote, a potential problem because financial trouble in either one of them could, quote, cause strong repercussions in financial markets. In 2003, the White House warning about Fannie and Freddie was upgraded to a systemic risk that could spread beyond just the housing sector. In fall of 2003, the Bush administration was pushing Congress hard to create a new federal agency to regulate and supervise Fannie and Freddie, both government-sponsored enterprises or GSEs.
We need a strong, world-class regulatory agency to oversee the prudential operations of the GSEs and the safety and the soundness of their financial activities.
But then Treasury Secretary Snow was getting a lot of pushback from then-ranking member, now chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Democratic Congressman Barney Frank.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not in a crisis.
In fact, Frank said the federal government should be encouraging Fannie and Freddie to do more to get low-income families into homes. And he believed too many people had a sky-is-falling mentality.
The more people, in my judgment, exaggerate a threat of safety and soundness, the more people conjure up the possibility of serious financial losses to the Treasury, which I do not see. I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially and withstand some of the disaster scenarios. And even if there were a problem, the federal government doesn't bail them out. But the more pressure there is there, then the less I think we see in terms of affordable housing.
The legislation was blocked. In 2005, Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan added his voice on Fannie and Freddie after Fannie leaders admitted major accounting screw-ups. Quote, enabling these institutions to increase in size, and they will once the crisis in their judgment passes, we are placing the total financial system of the future at a substantial risk. Adding later at another hearing on the topic,
if we fail to strengthen GSE regulation, we increase the possibility of insolvency and crisis.
But the two mortgage giants had staunch defenders. Democratic Senator Charles Schumer said, quote, I think Fannie and Freddie over the years have done an incredibly good job and are an intrinsic part of making America the best housed people in the world. If you look over the last 20 or whatever years, they've done a very, very good job. Senator John McCain co-sponsored legislation pushing for regulation, delivering a speech on the Senate floor in 2006. Quote, for years I have been concerned about the regulatory structure that governs Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And the sheer magnitude of these companies and the role they play in the housing market, the GSEs need to be reformed without delay. That bill made it out of the Senate Banking Committee with a party line vote. All of the Democrats voted against it, but fearing that they didn't have the votes to pass it, Republicans didn't even bring it up on the Senate floor. Senator Obama did not weigh in on that bill. Britt.
There you go, folks. There you go. Back in 2001, George Bush, the man that Obama and the Democrats want to blame for everything, was saying, hey, disaster is on the way. 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. All of those years, efforts by Republicans to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, fought by the Democrats. John McCain's reform bill, 2006, couldn't even get out. I mean, the Democrats, not one would vote for it. Obama was in the Senate at that time. Didn't even weigh in on it. So, you Obama bots out there, you can go on forever about how wonderful Barack Obama is, and this is all George Bush's fault. But there's your timeline. There's all the efforts made by the Bush administration, Treasury Secretary John Snow, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, John McCain in the Senate. We've got to reform Fannie Mae. Or like Greenspan said, increase the possibility of insolvency and crisis. The reform didn't happen. What do we have? Crisis. Near insolvency. Whose fault is it? The Democrats blocked all Republican efforts at reform.